ask what and go from there.
We're here today on Country Pocket with Hannah Delynn. The new album is Trustfall, and you just heard the first song off it called For the Record. Um, you have this album where you're re-examining some relationships, where you're looking at things that have ended, and the first thing that you come out with is you're looking at some of your own uh, failures in the situation and telling telling other people I want the best for you. Is that where you start? Like you started the album that way. When you go through difficult things, is that where your mind goes to at the beginning?
Hmm, that's a good question. That's a learned practice for me, I would say. The more I have realized over time that most people are trying to do their best, um, with the tools they have, with the skills they have, with their own experiences and in life. I think something that's been really helpful for me is to try to assume goodwill and good intent um and just like recognize everyone's humanity. And that's has not been an easy journey by any means, but that's where I'm trying moving ahead in my life to start from because I think it grants myself a lot more peace as well. And I think like hopefully just an interpersonal, I mean, all of life is interrelational, so we might as well try to assume the best in each other and reduce the pain in that way. And I started the record um, with that song as a sort of like tone setter to be like, hey, we're gonna get into some rough waters, and I want to be sure that we know from the start that like, yeah, I've caused some pain. I've been hurt in all these situations, but like in the end, I want the best for all of us.
That's interesting. I want the best for you. Are you thinking that some of the folks involved in the situations are going to hear that song, like put on the album, and that's what you want them to hear?
Potentially, yeah. I think writing songs in a very direct way, like talking about things that have hurt me, was a very new experience. And I felt really kind of scared about doing it. Because there have been, even if it's the one person with one story I'm thinking about who um, has played a big role in affecting has played a big role in the experiences of my life in the last 5 years. That like I think that's what the ultimate message I want them to take away from it. And maybe I shouldn't be so concerned about that. Um, but that's where I was at the time. And I think I'm trying to like infuse talking about difficult things with some grace. And it's very, I know that that person in particular has heard at least that song. So, um, yeah. Does
Yeah,
that answer your question?
it's it's an apology, but not not 100% just an apology, right? It's a little more complex than that.
Yeah, well, and in that particular scenario, I'm actually it is an apology because I think I'm trying to recognize that while I for the longest time was like, wow, why are you behaving this way? Like you're like we're why are you behaving this way? Beginning a lot of this record is beginning to realize my own part. The own not like fault necessarily, but just that everyone plays their part in these things. And in this scenario, for example, it could be like just not seeing the signs or reading the signs or listening to people who maybe had my best at heart and plowing ahead with whatever I wanted to do, and then being like, why is this happening the way it's happening? And um, just as an example, so yeah, in a way, it's like, hey, I'm just trying to take responsibility for my own part in this. It's not to absolve anyone of anything, um, necessarily. And so, yeah, I think it's a statement of goodwill for just that being human is hard sometimes. And I would rather go into this record knowing that I state that I acknowledge that. Because it does cover some hard personal territory for me, um, and like myriad instances in my life. So wanting that to be known, it is, yeah, I guess in a way it is an apology, but it's also more a recognition. Um, that I'm not perfect, and I maybe if I were to go back and do things again, I would do them differently, for my own sake and for the whole situation and their sake too. So even though there was like, yeah, some pretty hurtful stuff going on, um, I'm not trying to be like, it's all your fault forever, you know?
Yeah, so this is an interesting conversation. A lot of the chats I have on this show, the albums are very soul-bearing. There's a lot of detail. There's these very specific situations that are out there. And what this album does is it talks about a healing process, but not necessarily any specific healing process. It's just healing itself. Um, other than other than perhaps some hints that at least one person involved is someone you're related to, sharing blood, um, and that love was at some point involved. You don't necessarily know what happened. Um, is was What was the intentionality behind that?
Do you mean specifically for that song or just generally that's what
The whole
you wrote?
album, the fact that I guess the fact that it's not crystal clear what exactly happened. And you even said a variety of situations. And I wasn't quite sure how it had all gone down. Um, so I guess I'm asking, like, how intentional was it, and what was the purpose behind making it unclear in a lot of the details?
Yeah, great question. I think, well, the reason is because so much of my experience with healing has been being able to sit in that discomfort and that uncertainty and the liminal space. Like none of these situations are like necessarily going to have an end goal, or like you might not get the conversation that you want, that you still hope to have with a friend, a family member, an ex. And I think so much of the way we can help ourselves is to get comfortable in discomfort, or at least just finding tools and ways of coping that create more peace within ourselves and then therefore ripples out into our lives and doesn't, disrupt us so much. Because, I mean, it's like tale as old as time that suffering is just going to be a part of life. And, but saying that is one thing and doing it, like sitting in it, is an entirely different thing. And that's why calling the record Trust Fall felt so right to me because I called it that because I had been experiencing, I had been almost experimenting in my life for the previous handful of years with how much can I change how I'm approaching life by instead of waiting for the conditions to be right, by kind of acting and hoping the net will appear and almost um, testing the universe in a way by leading with the kind of life I want to have, leading with like the kind of mentality or emotions I want to feel, and seeing what responds, and doing that in very like consequential and real ways. Like whether that was as I pursue music, getting a side hustle and what side hustle that was. Like, is it something that I'm going to fall back into that I know how to do because I've done it for years and years and years? Or am I going to choose something where I learned something new um, or it gives me more of the flexibility that I want and need, or it's just simply not something I dread going and doing, but it feels safe to me. So that's more of like a practical example, not as much as a like relationship example. But I had been doing that in my life. And so when this record started to, these songs started to come out in the way that they did, I just realized that was the theme, was like, how do I, one, sit more gracefully in uncertainty, um, whether it's with other people or myself or job situations or the world. Um, and then how do I begin to build a deeper trust when I'm taking those leaps of faith? Um, and am I being proven right or wrong? And, it's like this muscle I was sort of developing. So I feel like I could ramble on about that for a long time. So I'll pause there and see if that's making sense.
Yeah, this muscle you're developing in on the second track, Leaf on a River, you're talking about opening the door and opening the blinds. It's like these are very conscious choices, and the light may have a healing aspect to it, but it's also, you know, uh, the light's shining in on you. You're visible, you're vulnerable.
Mm.
So, the transformative effect here, you know, it's a lot to go out and change everything, and a lot to it's a lot to go through some of the emotional processes you're talking about here. But let's just jump on to Leaf on a River here and
Mm.
talk about that process of forgiveness. Um, this album covering some bad situations. Um, you right off the bat talk about how forgiveness is not this abstract thing that you're doing for religion. It's not something you're doing for another person. It's something you're doing so you can move forward. So, so I guess tell me, has it been easy to forgive and has it moved you forward?
Has it been easy to forgive? Um, No. No, well, yes and no. I think I said no first because it's painful to reckon with time lost. That's maybe I'll just like many things that are painful to reckon with. But and in my mind, I'm in this situation, I'm thinking of self-forgiveness. Um, and it can be hard to pause and be like to appreciate all the things when you get to the point where you're like, okay, I need to forgive myself. There's so much up to that point where you're like, oh, wow, why didn't I see this sooner? Like, why did I handle this in that way? All these things, it's so easy to berate ourselves over and for. Um, that yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to reckon with that and sit with it. And I kind of switched it to yes because I think that when we can cultivate gratitude, because you wouldn't have gotten to the good place if you hadn't have messed up. And we have to be willing to look at that. Like we have to be willing to have the awareness and look back and be like, okay, I that was tough. Um, but I think once you do, you can begin to see that you're only becoming the person that you are, hopefully the best version of yourself because of that hardship. And I think that becomes easier to switch from, for me, even if it's like I have to mechanically, like, this is better for you if you get out of the blame game in your head and be grateful for ultimately these things you've been through. I think it's an easier switch over time. That's the building of the muscle to be like, it hurts to berate yourself. It hurts to be in pain that is self-inflicted. Why would we want to do that to ourselves? And literally, like I talk to myself. I've had to like develop a relationship with speaking to myself very differently. And with gentleness has been the gentleness has been my word for it. Is like how to be gentle with me. And how would I talk to someone else that I love when I don't necessarily want to talk to myself that way? Because it's easiest to be hardest on ourselves, I think. Because, like you said, you can keep the blinds closed on that much more easily. Um,
Has yourself been the hardest person to come to peace with?
not in everything. But I think through the other difficult situations, trying to like there can be a point where it's like this is what Leaf on a River really is about. There's I've developed such a what I think is a helpful pattern strategy habit in life of being like, okay, this is happening. How can I think about the role I'm playing in it? How can I take it in, like become better for it? I don't really like to use the word better, but how can I become more self-aware in this situation? What might I be doing that I'm not realizing I'm doing to fe fuel this other person's behavior? Take a look at it all. Um, but at some point, you just you can't control other people. I can't control other people. I can't, as much as I wish they would hear what I'm saying, or as much as I wish they would like understand where I'm coming from. I can't force that. And Leaf on a River was kind of that acknowledgement in both directions, both like, okay, it's time for you to like just surrender in ways that you feel like you've maybe let yourself down. Um, Things I could have done at a younger age, or maybe I'd be further along in this department now, whatever it is. I had dreams about all this stuff that went in subtly, like went into that song. And then when it comes to the forgiveness of another person, or the like really just deal with the uncertainty and the lack of closure. It's being able to be like, it's more, it's better for everyone, really, if I just let you be you and do what you're doing, as painful as that is, especially when it's someone like a family member that I want to fight with every fiber of my being for a certain relationship. But if for whatever reason they're not ready to fight in the same way I'm ready to fight. They might think they are. They might think they're doing what they need to be doing for themselves, but it doesn't line up with how I approach the situation. Like by butting heads about it, are you just pushing them further away? Even if it feels like you're letting them go, it's like it's really nuanced and complex and difficult. And um and in that, forgiving yourself for what if I'm doing the wrong thing by letting it go. But you, again, I think ultimately it's just like you can't control anyone but yourself and your own actions. Um, so moving forward in that way, again, just knowing you're trying to do the best you can. Like I'm trying to do the best I can with the information that I have of this situation.
Yeah, you spend a good amount of the track as much as one can, acknowledging that there are limitations. I am what I am. The part of this forgiveness is an acceptance, slightly slightly different emotions.
Mm.
Um, but very connected. Um, maybe one is realizing, you can't change what happened. The other is realizing that not only is that true, but it's not entirely your fault. There's a little bit of grace and sympathy you need to extend to yourself. Um, feel like you've reached that sea?
I feel like, I mean, I feel like I'm flowing more gently on the river, you know? Like I think that's a practice that I will be probably working on for all of my life. And it's almost more like, can I envision the sea? Can I aim for um, that union of just ultimate peace and forgiveness? And I don't know if that's possible in the human experience. I think you can catch glimpses of it though. I think you can have moments and it's more like, okay, I'm caught on this rock. I'm like plastered up against it now. And like, how do I wait for the current to kind of push me off and how do I help myself off of it and then keep flowing again, you know? That was me being a leaf. But yeah, I think I'm getting better at creating my own internal peaceful sea. But it certainly can be rocky, stormy weather in there sometimes.
Let's hear Leaf on a River, and we'll be right back.